They sealed off the Holloway farm as dawn broke over Willow Creek. The house sat silent now, its white paint catching the weak October sunlight, but no one who stood there could see it as anything other than a tomb. The crime scene tape stretched across the porch like a wound stitched shut too late. Detectives moved in and out with plastic gloves and sealed bags, their faces drawn, their movements deliberate. Every step inside the Holloway home was a reminder of the brutality that had unfolded within its walls. Detective Sarah Monroe, the youngest on the team but already known for her sharp instincts, crouched by the father's bedside where the torn note had been discovered. "It ends tonight," the note read, jagged letters scrawled across cheap notebook paper. Sarah ran her fingers just above the surface, careful not to smudge. The words were not merely a message. They were a performance, a declaration, almost theatrical in their simplicity. Whoever left it wanted the police to find it. Wanted them to know this was not random. Sheriff David Harlow, a man who had worked Willow Creek cases for nearly 30 years, stood with his hat in his hands, staring at the note as if it were the final insult in a lifetime of sins. "This isn't a burglary gone wrong," he muttered. "This is personal." The Holloways were not without enemies, though no one in town wanted to admit it in those first terrible hours. David Holloway's brother, Mark, had long quarreled with him over their father's farmland. Some said jealousy ran thicker than blood when it came to the Holloway inheritance. Then there was Caleb Price, a former farmhand who had left under bad terms, fired after a bitter shouting match in the barn one summer. Caleb had lived rough ever since, seen in town only to drink or start fights, his bitterness as much a part of his identity as his dirt-stained overalls. But as the investigators dug deeper, whispers of another possibility emerged, something far more disturbing. Neighbors described hearing nothing unusual that night, no shouts, no gunshots. Just silence, until the flashing lights arrived in the early hours. Silence, except one thing. Mrs. Gertrude Lane, who lived across the cornfield, swore she heard the faint sound of an engine idling just after midnight. "It wasn't a tractor," she insisted. "It was a truck. I know the difference." The detail seemed small, but in cases like this, small details became lifelines. Sarah and her partner, Detective Reeves, followed the lead. Tire tracks were found near the back road, half hidden in the dirt, leading toward the Holloway barn. Not fresh enough to be obvious at first glance, but distinct under careful inspection. The prints matched an older model pickup, wide tread, uneven wear on the back left tire. Sheriff Harlow immediately thought of Caleb Price's rusty Chevy, which had been the subject of local gossip for years. But there was a complication. That same morning, Caleb was seen at McGregor's gas station on the far side of town, buying cigarettes and a six-pack. The cashier remembered because Caleb had tried to pay with a crumpled dollar short of the total, and she made him put back a pack. If the timeline was accurate, Caleb couldn't have been both at the farm and at the station. Unless, of course, he wasn't working alone. The case file began to swell with contradictions. The coroner confirmed that the Holloways were killed between midnight and 2 a.m. All 5 victims had been attacked in their sleep, with no sign of struggle except a faint bruise on Margaret's wrist, as if she had stirred awake too late. The weapon was likely a heavy farm tool, possibly a hatchet or crowbar, but the precision suggested someone who knew the layout of the house well. No forced entry. No broken locks. Whoever entered either had a key or knew exactly how to slip inside. That detail unsettled the community more than anything else, because it meant the killer, or killers, wasn't a stranger. It was someone close, someone trusted. Reporters from nearby towns flooded into Willow Creek, their vans lining Main Street. The story of the farmhouse massacre spread quickly, framed by headlines about a peaceful family wiped out overnight. Neighbors who had once spoken warmly about the Holloways now whispered in the corners of diners and grocery stores, debating who among them might have snapped. Fear settled into the town like fog, heavy and suffocating. Back at the precinct, Sarah pieced together the Holloway family's final days. David had been unusually tense in the week before his death. He withdrew cash from the bank, nearly $5,000, but the money was nowhere to be found in the house. Margaret had confided to a friend at church that David had been worried about someone watching them, though she hadn't elaborated. Their eldest son, Matthew, had been caught arguing with a man outside the feed store 2 nights before the killings, though no one could recall the stranger's face. Too many fragments, too few answers. One night, unable to sleep, Sarah returned to the farm alone. The crime scene was quiet now, sealed off but still haunted. She walked the perimeter, flashlight sweeping over the earth. That's when she noticed something the earlier teams had missed: a series of faint boot prints leading away from the barn, not toward the road, but deeper into the cornfield. The prints disappeared after a dozen steps, swallowed by the soil and stalks. But they were fresh enough to set her pulse racing. Someone had been here. She followed the line as far as it would take her until she came upon an old scarecrow slumped at the edge of the field. Its face, once painted with a cheerful smile, was faded into something grotesque under moonlight. Tucked under its burlap arm was a folded slip of paper. Sarah's breath caught as she opened it. 5 words stared back at her, written in the same jagged hand as the note found in the bedroom. Not the last. Not yet. The message was no longer just about the Holloways. It was a promise, or a threat, that more blood was yet to come. Sarah drove back to the precinct with the note sealed in a plastic bag, her mind racing. The Holloway case was no longer just about solving one night's slaughter. It was about stopping whatever storm was coming next. But she couldn't shake one thought as she tried to connect the dots. If this was bigger than the Holloways, then who in Willow Creek was next? And more importantly, who in Willow Creek already knew? The second note suggests the killings were only the beginning. Detectives must uncover whether this was a feud, a conspiracy, or the work of someone far more dangerous hiding in plain sight.